When Donald Trump hijacked Barack Obama's live town hall, he expected to dominate the conversation, until Obama delivered one devastating response that left the entire nation speechless. The audience sat frozen, unsure of what they'd just witnessed. It was meant to be a routine Tuesday evening town hall in Phoenix, Arizona. Barack Obama sat beneath the studio's bright lights, his jacket unbuttoned and tie slightly loosened, projecting approachability without sacrificing authority. He was discussing democratic resilience when the moderator's earpiece suddenly buzzed. Seconds later, the atmosphere shifted completely. "Mr. President," the moderator stammered, eyes wide as he stared into the camera, "we've just received word that President Trump is requesting to join us live." A collective gasp swept through the audience. This wasn't planned. Nobody anticipated a sitting president interrupting his predecessor's event, especially on live national television. Behind the glass partition, producers gestured frantically. The moderator looked as though someone had announced a fire drill. Obama remained perfectly still. He leaned back slightly, one hand resting casually on the armrest, the other touching his chin thoughtfully. His expression stayed calm, almost amused. "Put him through," Obama said in that measured cadence Americans had missed since 2016. The screen above the stage illuminated. Trump's face appeared via video feed, his voice booming through the speakers with characteristic confidence. "Barack, I had to call in," Trump began without preamble. "I'm watching this whole production and frankly, it's embarrassing. Completely embarrassing. You're sitting there discussing democracy while your administration hemorrhaged jobs. Under my leadership, we achieved the greatest economy in world history. Everyone knows it. The numbers speak for themselves." Some audience members shifted nervously. Others whispered among themselves. This wasn't just unusual. It was a live collision of political eras, unscripted and unfiltered. Obama didn't rush to respond. Instead, he turned toward the crowd, allowing the silence to build tension, then spoke as if continuing an intimate conversation. "Well," he said softly, "it appears we have unexpected company tonight." Laughter rippled through the audience, momentarily breaking the tension. But everyone sensed what was coming. An unrehearsed confrontation that could go viral. Within minutes, Trump, sensing momentum from his interruption, pressed harder. "People remember the disaster before I took office. Manufacturing was dying. China was destroying us economically. I stepped in and fixed everything. The statistics don't lie. Without my intervention, this country would be in ruins. Now you want to sit there pretending you accomplished something meaningful? You didn't, Barack. Everyone knows it." His words weren't polished. They were forceful, loud, designed to overwhelm. But they carried weight because he remained the sitting president, dominating headlines and network coverage daily. The audience, however, wasn't watching the screen anymore. Every eye focused on Obama. Everyone wanted to witness his reaction. Would he take the bait? Would anger surface? Would he let it pass? Instead, Obama leaned forward slightly, hands now clasped, and looked directly into the camera. He didn't match Trump's volume or urgency. He spoke with the steadiness of someone who had weathered countless battles and understood the power of perfect timing. "Mr. President," Obama said, pausing deliberately to let the words settle, "I believe the American people care less about who speaks loudest and more about who speaks truthfully." The crowd erupted in applause. The moderator shifted in his seat, partly relieved, partly anxious about where this unprecedented moment might lead. The confrontation was no longer theoretical. It was happening live. Trump jumped back in, his voice rising, but something fundamental had shifted. Obama's composed response wasn't just about the words. It was about presence, control, and tone. Viewers at home could feel the contrast viscerally. One man storming, the other unshakable. In that moment, the room's energy belonged entirely to Obama. But this was merely the opening move. What followed would transform a political clash into one of the most replayed television moments in recent history. Within the East Wing's corridors, silence hung heavy as staffers moved carefully, avoiding eye contact, bracing for the inevitable storm. When the door to the First Lady's private office closed, the sound echoed sharply enough to make even Secret Service agents glance up. Everyone knew what was brewing, though none dared predict how far it would escalate. Melania sat behind, her polished mahogany desk, an untouched glass of water beside her. The leaked DNA report lay spread before her, pages wrinkled from being gripped too tightly. Her hands trembled, not from weakness, but from pure fury. She had spent years perfecting the art of public silence, keeping emotions carefully hidden from scrutiny. But this was different. This concerned Barron. "I will not permit them to destroy my son," she snapped, her accent slicing through the tension like a blade. "Do you understand? I don't care what it requires." Across from her, two advisors shifted uncomfortably. Raymond Holt, her chief political strategist, cleared his throat and attempted to sound reassuring. "First Lady, we can manage this situation. These rumors, these leaks, they're temporary. What matters is controlling the narrative before..." "Before what?" she interrupted, slamming her palm against the desk. The sound reverberated through the room. "Before every newspaper in America. Prince lies about my family? Before my son becomes a target?" Her voice cracked with a mixture of rage and something deeper. Fear. The room fell silent. Even Holt, who had navigated crises for decades, had no immediate answer. This transcended politics. It was about bloodlines, identity, something too sensitive for typical damage control. Melania stood abruptly, pushing her chair back so forcefully it rattled against the wall. She began pacing, her heels striking the marble floor like an angry metronome. "I sacrificed everything for this position," she muttered, speaking as much to herself as to her team. "I protected. I remained silent. I smiled when I wanted to scream. And this is how they repay me?" Charlotte Winslow, a younger aide, dared to speak. "Ma'am, we're still investigating the source of the leak. If we can trace it back, we might..." Melania whirled around. "Find them. I don't care about methods or cost. I want to know who betrayed me." The demand wasn't unreasonable by Washington standards, but her tone, low, sharp, absolute, made everyone stiffen. Charlotte hastily scribbled notes before slipping out to begin making calls. This left Holt, who understood better than to push when the First Lady was in this state. Still, advising was his responsibility, and he leaned forward cautiously. "We have several options. We can discredit the report, entirely claim it's fabricated, tie it to political enemies. Or we can delay, say nothing, and let it fade naturally." Melania's laughter was bitter and hollow. "Fade? Nothing fades here. Everything becomes permanent. They'll use this to destroy him, and to destroy me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I won't allow it." For a moment, vulnerability flickered across her face, eyes glassy, hands gripping the abandoned chair. But then she straightened, wiping away any trace of weakness. "The mask was back. Prepare statements," she ordered. "But nothing leaves this office without my approval. Not a single word." Holt nodded, though he knew what Melania didn't. Secrecy never lasted in Washington. The harder you clamped down, the more others pried. And somewhere, he suspected, someone already possessed copies of that damning report. The outburst didn't end with words. Later that night, staffers described hearing glass shatter from the private residence, perhaps a vase thrown in a moment of uncontrolled rage. No one dared investigate. They simply knew the First Lady had crossed a line she rarely allowed herself to reach. As word trickled out, aides shared hushed accounts with trusted contacts. "She's furious," one whispered over the phone to a colleague at the Eisenhower Executive Office building. "I've never seen her like this. If anyone thinks she'll stay quiet, they're gravely mistaken." Those whispers became part of the story themselves, adding fuel to an already blazing fire. It wasn't just about the DNA results anymore. It was about Melania's explosive reaction, proof that the leak had struck deeper than anyone imagined. But rage alone couldn't bury a leak, especially when someone else in Washington was already preparing to make it devastatingly public. The morning after Melania's furious eruption, Washington's air felt suffocating. A motorcade slipped quietly down Pennsylvania Avenue. Not for any state function, but for a private meeting at a law office nestled between coffee shops in downtown D.C. The people inside weren't wearing patriotic lapel pins or speaking in campaign slogans. They were lawyers, crisis managers, and spin doctors, assembled for one purpose: burying the DNA leak completely. Raymond Holt sat at the center, flanked by two attorneys from a firm notorious for handling political disasters behind closed doors. The folder containing the leaked results rested on the polished conference table, like a live grenade. "We have two primary strategies," one lawyer stated flatly. "Discredit or distract. We can call this fabricated, link it to political opponents, maybe suggest it's part of a coordinated smear campaign. Or what?" Holt interrupted, already exhausted by half measures. "Or we bury it under something bigger. Another story, another controversy. Washington has a short memory when you give it something shinier to chase." Holt rubbed his temples. He understood the mechanics perfectly. Distractions worked, but timing was everything. Play the wrong card. Too early it looks desperate. Wait too long, the leak becomes a wildfire. Meanwhile, back at the White House, Charlotte returned with troubling intelligence. She'd spent hours calling contacts, trying to trace the leak's origin. Some pointed to the medical community. Others whispered about a staffer with access to private records. Regardless of the trail, it ended identically. Someone wanted this. Exposed, and they'd been methodical. Melania paced the residence, phone pressed to her ear as Holt briefed her from downtown. "They're telling me we can contain it," he said carefully. "But they'll need time and significant resources." "Time we don't have," Melania snapped. "By now, half the city knows. If Jasmine Crockett gets her hands on this, She stopped, biting back the rest of her sentence. Just thinking about the outspoken congresswoman wielding this weapon made her chest tighten. Charlotte entered cautiously, clutching her notepad. "Ma'am, there's already chatter online, small accounts, nothing major yet, but people are asking questions." Melania's expression hardened. "Shut it down." "How?" Charlotte asked softly. "Call platforms, call editors, call whoever necessary. I don't care if it requires threats or favors. No one repeats this story." The room fell silent again. Even by Washington standards, where spin was currency, this was an enormous undertaking. Trying to silence an entire city was like attempting to hold back the Potomac River with bare hands. Later that evening, Holt reconvened the crisis team. They ran through scenarios, each more desperate than the last. Fake leaks to muddy waters, quiet payments to journalists, pressure on social media companies to flag misinformation. Every idea carried substantial risk. One advisor leaned forward, speaking in hushed tones. "The real danger isn't the report itself, it's the reaction. If people see how desperately the First Lady wants this buried, they'll assume the worst. We need her to appear calm, controlled, above the fray. Not angry, not desperate." Holt exhaled slowly. Easier said than done. Meanwhile, word of Melania's fury was spreading faster than the DNA rumor itself. Staffers talked, reporters listened. The phrase "explosive outburst" began appearing in private text exchanges between journalists, everyone waiting for someone bold enough to print it. In Dallas, Texas, reporter Lyle Morgan sat at his desk, staring at an email from a trusted source. Attached was a scan of what appeared to be the DNA report. He wasn't the only one who had it, but he was among the few willing to verify it before publishing. He made a call to a congressional staffer he trusted. "Have you heard what's happening in the East Wing?" he asked. The staffer's reply was brief. "She's panicking. If you have something, you should run it." Morgan leaned back, torn between caution and ambition. If he went forward, the story would explode nationally. If he hesitated, someone else would beat him to it. While Morgan debated, Jasmine Crockett was already monitoring developments closely from her Dallas office. She studied forwarded emails with sharp eyes, her expression narrowing as she read. "This isn't just about a family issue," she told her aides calmly. "This is about transparency, about what they hide and why." Her staff exchanged knowing glances. Recognizing that tone, Crockett had found her opening, But before she could make her move, Melania's team was preparing a counter-narrative that would test exactly how much control the First Lady actually wielded. Jasmine Crockett wasn't someone who tiptoed around scandals. She had built her reputation on speaking boldly, cutting through noise and saying what others were too frightened to voice. So when word of Barron's DNA leak reached her desk, she didn't just raise an eyebrow, she leaned in. Her staffers gathered. In a small Dallas conference room, laptops open, coffee cups scattered, and a whiteboard covered with names, dates, and arrows that resembled a political thriller's plot map. Jasmine stood at the front, hands on her hips, her expression razor-sharp. "All right," she said, her voice steady but charged. "Tell me what we know. Skip the fluff. I want the real trail." Marcus Bellamy, her lead researcher, tall, sharp-minded, and quick with facts, clicked to the first slide on the projector. The document first surfaced in a secure email thread between medical staffers. Someone forwarded it, though we can't identify who yet. It spread rapidly afterward. At least 3 reporters have copies, but no one's publishing. "Why?" Jasmine asked. "They're scared," Marcus replied. "If they print it, the First Lady's legal team comes down hard. It's easier to sit on it." Jasmine smirked. "Scared? That's not journalism. That's babysitting power." The room chuckled nervously. They knew when Jasmine was in this mood, the conversation would cut deep. Lena Ortiz, another staffer, spoke up. "We're also hearing Melania's been volatile, shouting at staff, making threats. People are calling it the worst meltdown since she entered the White House." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "Volatile? That's not a headline, that's a symptom. If she's reacting this intensely, it means this leak cuts deeper than they want anyone to realize." She leaned closer to the table, her voice dropping. "And if it's that personal, they'll do anything to bury it. Which means we have a responsibility to ensure it doesn't stay buried." The team exchanged knowing looks. They understood where this was heading. Jasmine Crockett wasn't going to sit back. She was going to move. She picked up her phone, dialing without hesitation. On the other end, a journalist she trusted answered cautiously. "Congresswoman, I heard you've been investigating the DNA story." "You heard right," she replied, pacing slowly. "Tell me what you know, off the record." The journalist hesitated. "I've seen the document, haven't published, too risky." "Risky for whom?" Jasmine pressed. "For you, your paper, or the truth?" Silence stretched before he sighed. "The First Lady's people are already circling. They'll destroy anyone who touches this." Jasmine didn't flinch. "Then let them come for me. I don't scare easily." She hung up and turned back to her team. "Here's what we do. We don't touch Barron. That's completely off limits. The story isn't about him, it's about her. It's about the secrecy, the cover-up, the lengths they'll go to protect an image while demanding silence from everyone else." Marcus nodded. "So you're planning a public statement?" "Not just a statement," Jasmine said, her tone electric. "We're going to set the framework. We're going to discuss what happens when leaders hide behind walls of power. We're going to show people that truth doesn't belong to politicians. It belongs to them." That night, Jasmine drafted her initial remarks, short, sharp, impossible to ignore. The next morning, standing outside her Dallas office with microphones clustered around her, she delivered them with calm precision. "Secrecy is the currency. The powerful," she began. "When documents leak, when people speak out, it's not chaos, it's democracy at work. And when those in the highest positions scramble to bury the truth, we should all be asking, what are they afraid of us knowing?" Reporters leaned forward, recording every word. She didn't mention Barron. She didn't even mention Melania by name. But the implication was crystal clear. One journalist shouted, "Congresswoman Crockett, are you saying the First Lady is covering something up?" Jasmine's eyes locked onto his. "I'm saying this. If the truth makes someone uncomfortable, that's their problem, not the people's." The clip went viral within hours. On Twitter, hashtags tied to secrecy and transparency climbed the trending charts. Cable news pundits replayed her words, dissecting them, debating whether she had gone too far or not far enough. Meanwhile, in the East Wing, Melania's team scrambled. Holt called an emergency meeting, his face pale as he showed her the clip. She's careful, but she's aiming directly at us. She's framing this as a moral fight. Melania's jaw tightened. Then we fight back harder. But Jasmine wasn't just talking. She was preparing to put evidence on the table, the kind of evidence that would make silence impossible. The air inside the Rayburn House office building carried unusual weight that morning. Cameras lined the hallway, reporters jostled for position, and staffers whispered with the intensity that signals something bigger than routine politics is about to unfold. Jasmine Crockett was scheduled to speak at a subcommittee hearing, but everyone knew this wouldn't be just another standard session. Jasmine walked into the chamber with her characteristic calm stride, papers tucked neatly in her hands. She wore no theatrical expressions, just focus. Yet every step drew eyes. She wasn't simply attending a hearing. She was staging a confrontation that could reshape Washington's conversation. On the other side of the city, Melania's team sat glued to screens. Holt leaned forward in his chair at the White House Communications office, sweat beading at his temple. "If she goes direct, we're in serious trouble," he muttered. Melania sat rigidly beside him, arms crossed, eyes locked on the screen. She had been briefed repeatedly that Jasmine wouldn't mention Barron by name. That was the red line. But the problem was clear. She didn't need to. The hearing opened with formalities, but energy shifted when Jasmine's turn arrived. She adjusted the microphone, scanning the room with deliberate patience before beginning. "America doesn't just run on laws, it runs on trust," she said, her voice steady. "When those in power treat truth like it's optional, that trust erodes, little by little, every single day." Her words cut through silence. Committee members shifted in their seats, sensing her direction. Reporters at the back leaned forward, pens poised. Jasmine continued, her tone sharpening. "We've seen it repeatedly. Leaders demanding loyalty, demanding silence, demanding we look away when truth becomes inconvenient. But democracy doesn't function when secrecy becomes the default. The American people deserve better." One congressman interjected, attempting to redirect her to the official agenda. "Congresswoman Crockett, we're here today to discuss transparency in government contracts." She didn't flinch. "Exactly," Jasmine replied, locking eyes with him. "Transparency is the issue. Whether it's contracts, classified documents, or private reports being hidden to protect political families, the pattern remains identical. Cover it up, silence dissent, and hope nobody asks questions." The room erupted in murmurs. Everyone understood her implication. She had drawn the line without crossing it, pointing directly at the White House while maintaining just enough deniability. Cameras zoomed in as she pulled out a sheet of paper. Not the DNA report itself, but something equally damning. A timeline of communications showing how rapidly the First Lady's office had moved to shut down chatter after the leak. "Within 48 hours of this report circulating," Jasmine said, tapping the paper for emphasis, "calls were made to media outlets, editors were pressured, and platforms were influenced to silence discussion. If the report were meaningless, if it were fabricated, why scramble so desperately to bury it?" Gasps filled the room. This wasn't about Barron anymore. It was about power and control. Jasmine had reframed everything. A reporter shouted from the back, breaking decorum. "Congresswoman, are you accusing the First Lady of using her office to suppress information?" Jasmine didn't hesitate. "I'm saying this. Truth doesn't need bodyguards. If truth can stand alone, why not let the people see it?" In the White House viewing room, Melania's fists clenched. "She's exploiting this." She hissed. Holt tried to calm her. "She's smart. She's making it about transparency, not about Barron. If we attack her, we look guilty." Melania shook her head. "If we stay silent, we look weak." Back in the hearing, Jasmine leaned into the microphone for her closing statement. Her voice softened, but carried more weight than before. "Families should be off limits. But when secrecy becomes a shield for power, when anger replaces accountability, we all lose. This isn't about one household. It's about every household that deserves honesty from those who lead them. The room burst into chaos. Reporters firing questions, committee members whispering fiercely. The clip would play on every network by nightfall. Jasmine stood, collected her papers, and walked out as calmly as she had entered. But her words lingered like thunder after lightning. She hadn't needed the actual DNA report. She had turned the First Lady's reaction into the real story. But outside the hearing room, as microphones swarmed her, Jasmine knew the battle wasn't over, because Melania wasn't the type to retreat quietly. By nightfall, Jasmine Crockett's words were everywhere. Cable networks looped her hearing clip like breaking news, the kind of footage producers knew would draw viewers regardless of the hour. The phrase, "truth doesn't need bodyguards," crawled across screens on MSNBC, CNN, and even appeared in clips running on YouTube and TikTok. In Washington, the press corps couldn't get enough. Reporters gathered at the National Press Club, exchanging notes, shaking their heads at how rapidly the story had grown. Some admitted they hadn't planned to touch the DNA leak. It was too sensitive, too risky. But Jasmine had changed the stakes. She hadn't exposed Barron. She had exposed Melania's reaction, and that was safer to print. At a diner in Indianapolis, a group of middle-aged patrons sat with their coffees, watching Jasmine's testimony replay on a mounted TV. One woman set down her mug, shaking her head, slowly. "You hear that? She's right. If it's nothing, why is the First Lady losing her mind over it?" Across the counter, a man in work clothes chimed in. "Because they're always hiding something. Always." That kind of reaction was repeating itself in living rooms, diners, and offices nationwide. It wasn't about whether the DNA report was accurate anymore. It was about perception. And in politics, perception can be more dangerous than fact. Social media only amplified the frenzy. On Twitter, hashtags like "depict, truth or cover-up" and "Crockett calls it out" trended overnight. TikTok creators spliced Jasmine's remarks with clips of past Trump family interviews, hinting at contradictions and secrets. Even Instagram memes joined in, mocking Melania's rumored meltdown with doctored photos of broken vases and shattered glass. Inside the White House, the mood was grim. Holt and Charlotte convened a late-night strategy session, huddled in the communications office. Staffers looked worn, ties loosened, eyes bloodshot from staring at screens. Every attempt to contain the story seemed to backfire. Holt massaged, his forehead staring at the television where Jasmine's clip played yet again. She didn't even mention Barron, and somehow she still turned this into a hurricane. She framed it as her standing for the people. "We look like we're hiding behind curtains." Charlotte sighed. "We can't keep denying without specifics. People are already asking. If it's fake, why not release the truth?" Melania entered the room quietly, her expression unreadable. Everyone stood a little straighter. She scanned the group, then pointed at the screen. "This woman, Crockett, she thinks she can use me. She thinks I am weak." Her voice hardened. "She does not know me." Meanwhile, in Dallas, Jasmine was fielding calls from national outlets. Producers from CNN, MSNBC, and even ABC's Good Morning America wanted her on air. Her staff crowded into her office, buzzing with energy. Marcus grinned as he read a new poll on his tablet. "Congresswoman, you're trending in every state we checked. People are calling you the voice of transparency. Approval among independents just jumped 7 points overnight." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. "That's good, but we have to keep it about principle, not gossip. The moment this becomes about Barron personally, we lose the moral ground." Lena chimed in, nodding. "So how do we move forward? Another statement? A TV appearance?" Jasmine tapped her pen on the desk, considering. "Not yet. Let them chase me. The more they beg for comments, the more control we have. But when I do speak again, it has to land like a hammer." Across the country, Americans debated the issue in everyday places. Workshops, schools, coffee lines. Parents worried about their own children being dragged into politics. Workers complained about politicians playing games with truth. What united them, oddly enough, was the sense that Jasmine had touched a nerve everyone understood. Secrecy breeds mistrust. At the White House, Holt gathered the courage to speak bluntly to Melania. "First Lady, if we go on the attack, we risk proving her point. But if we stay silent, she owns the narrative. We need a third path." Melania's eyes narrowed. "Then create one." Outside, as cameras rolled and social feeds kept spinning, the frenzy showed no sign of slowing. Jasmine had struck a chord, and America was listening. But the First Lady wasn't preparing to bow her head. She was preparing to strike back, harder than anyone expected. By the third day, Melania Trump's silence had become its own headline. Networks ran tickers asking why the First Lady hadn't responded, while opinion pieces speculated about her state of mind. For someone who had carefully crafted her public image around restraint, every hour of quiet looked like weakness. That morning, inside the East Wing, Melania's private team gathered in her residence. Heavy curtains blocked daylight, giving the room a tense, insulated atmosphere. Holt stood at the head of the table with notes spread out, while Charlotte sat across with a stack of press clippings. Melania entered last, wearing a pale suit, her expression carved from stone. "Tell me what we do," she said without sitting. Holt cleared his throat. "We strike back, but carefully. We position you as a mother first, First Lady second. We frame Crockett as reckless, someone willing to drag families into political theater for personal gain. If we can make this about decency, we win." Charlotte added, "We've drafted a statement for you to release. Short, controlled, no direct mention of Crockett, but a reminder that children should be off limits." Melania scanned the paper briefly, then set it down. "Not enough." Holt frowned. "With respect, going harder could backfire. Right now, Crockett has public sympathy. If we attack directly, it looks like we're hiding something." Melania leaned forward, her voice low. "I am not hiding. I am protecting. There is a difference." She paused. "She makes me look desperate. I will show her I am strong." For a moment, the room was silent. Holt knew the First Lady rarely contradicted advice so openly. When she did, there was no swaying her. Later that afternoon, a camera crew quietly entered the White House. Unlike the polished events of past weeks, this wasn't for a holiday celebration or school visit. It was for Melania herself. She sat in a chair near a window, sunlight catching the edge of her face, and delivered a statement directly to the camera. "I have always believed children must be off limits," she said, her accent precise, her voice steady. "What I see now is shameful. People in positions of power using rumors and lies to attack my family. My son deserves privacy, not spectacle. I will never stop protecting him." The recording was short, less than 2 minutes, but it landed like a stone in still water. Networks aired it on repeat. Commentators debated whether she had looked strong or defensive. Supporters praised her as a mother standing up for her child. Critics pointed out that she hadn't addressed the allegations, only scolded those asking questions. In Dallas, Jasmine's staff watched the video together. Marcus broke the silence first. "She's doubling down on the family angle. Smart. It makes her untouchable in some people's eyes." Jasmine crossed her arms. "Untouchable or untouchable until the truth slips out again?" She shook her head. "She's playing for sympathy, but she can't erase the cover-up. That's where we stay focused." The next morning, Melania's pushback expanded. Friendly media outlets ran op-eds defending her, arguing Crockett was exploiting motherhood for political gain. Conservative talk radio exploded with calls blasting Jasmine as heartless and obsessed with tearing down families. At the same time, Melania appeared at a children's hospital in Baltimore. Cameras captured her smiling gently with patients, hugging parents, and reminding the public of her Be Best initiative. Every photo reinforced the image of a caring mother unfairly attacked, but not everyone bought it. In Cleveland, a group of activists gathered outside a community center, holding signs that read "Truth Image" and "We Deserve Transparency." Local news interviewed one attendee, a teacher named Robin Lane. "Look, I respect any mother protecting her child," she said, But this isn't about a kid. This is about power. If they're hiding this, what else are they hiding? Inside the West Wing, Melania's advisors kept close watch on reactions. Some saw her rebound as a victory. Poll numbers among her base had stabilized, sympathetic headlines poured in. But Holt remained uneasy. "We may have bought time," he admitted quietly to Charlotte, "but Crockett hasn't fired her next shot yet. When she does, it'll be bigger." Back in Dallas, Jasmine prepared her next move. Her aides urged her to respond quickly to Melania's statement, but she resisted. "No," she said firmly. "Let her ride this wave. The longer she leans on sympathy, the harder it will hit when we put receipts on the table." She tapped her desk, eyes sharp. "We're not here to fight over emotions, we're here to fight over truth." But even as Melania tried to rebuild her image, Jasmine was already preparing to tear down the curtain with something far more concrete than words. For days, Jasmine Crockett had let Melania's sympathy campaign breathe. She had watched as the First Lady posed with children in hospitals, smiled softly for cameras, and issued short statements painting her as a mother under attack. But Jasmine knew that sympathy alone couldn't carry the weight of secrecy forever. And when her aides confirmed that multiple journalists now had proof of coordinated cover-up efforts, she decided the time had come. Her office in Dallas buzzed with tension that morning. Reporters camped outside, hungry for any sign of her next move. Inside, Jasmine's staff circled around a conference table stacked with documents, emails, and call logs. The air was thick with anticipation. Marcus broke the silence. "We've got confirmation. At least 3 editors say they were pressured by the First Lady's team to bury the story. Some even received calls from federal contacts." He slid a file across the table. "We have names, times, transcripts. This is bigger than we thought." Jasmine skimmed the papers, her face unreadable. "They didn't just try to protect their image," she said slowly. "They used government channels to intimidate the press. That's not a family matter. That's abuse of power." Lena, always cautious, leaned forward. "If you drop this, it's war. They'll come for you harder than ever." Jasmine looked up, her eyes firm. "Good. Let them." Later that day, she stood behind a podium in the House press briefing room. The space was packed wall to wall with journalists, cameras clicking before she even spoke. She adjusted the microphone and let the silence stretch, commanding the room without raising her voice. "I want to be clear," she began, her tone measured. "This is not about a child. This is not about gossip. This is about power and what happens when that power is misused to silence the truth." She held up a stack of printed call logs. In the last 72 hours, editors from respected news outlets received pressure not to publish a story, not from the public, not from concerned parents, but from individuals tied directly to the First Lady's office. Some of those calls involved threats of access being revoked, funding being questioned, and reputations being ruined if they didn't comply. The room erupted, reporters whispering fiercely, pens scratching, cameras flashing. Jasmine didn't flinch. "This isn't about one household," she continued. "It's about every household in America. If those in power can intimidate journalists into silence, what chance do regular citizens have when they speak up? This is not democracy. This is control," a reporter shouted over the noise. "Congresswoman Crockett, are you directly accusing the First Lady of ordering these calls?" Jasmine met his eyes without hesitation. "I'm saying the calls came from people under her authority. Whether she picked up the phone herself or gave the order behind closed doors, the result is the same: suppression of truth." In that moment, the room went still. It was the quote every network would replay by evening. Back at the White House, Holt slammed his fist on the table. "She's reckless. She just accused the First Lady of abusing her office." Melania sat stiffly, her jaw clenched, her nails digging into the armrest of her chair. "Then we sue her. Defamation." Holt hesitated. "That would make it worse. The moment we file, the documents become evidence. She wants us to overreact," Charlotte added quietly. The optics of suing a congresswoman for demanding transparency could destroy us. Melania's face flushed with anger, but she said nothing. Meanwhile, in the press room, Jasmine doubled down. She leaned closer to the microphone, lowering her voice so every word landed like a blow. Every parent wants to protect their child. I respect that. But no parent, no spouse, no official has the right to weaponize silence to protect their own image while punishing the people for asking questions. We deserve leaders who answer, not leaders who hide. The reporters broke into a frenzy, shouting questions as Jasmine stepped away from the podium. She didn't look back. Her statement had been delivered like a hammer striking steel, loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. That night, anchors across the country dissected her words. Pundits argued fiercely. Was she brave or reckless? A truth-teller or an opportunist? But even those who disliked her admitted one thing. She had forced the First Lady into a corner. At a bar in Phoenix, a young couple watched the news replay. On a mounted television, the man shook his head, muttering, "If she's lying, why does she sound so damn convincing?" His partner sipped her drink slowly. Maybe because she isn't. Across the country, conversations like that rippled into the early hours. Jasmine's gamble had paid off, at least for now. She had shifted the spotlight back onto Melania, away from the sympathy card and directly onto questions of power. But the deeper Jasmine pushed, the more dangerous the game became. If Melania lashed back, the fight could move from words to something far harsher. Washington thrives on scandal, but this one had its own gravity. By the time Jasmine Crockett's press conference replayed on every major network, lawmakers across the Hill were already choosing sides. Some whispered their support behind closed doors, praising her courage. Others shook their heads, warning that she had crossed a line no one dared before, pointing directly at the First Lady. The morning after, the atmosphere in Congress was electric. Reporters swarmed the Capitol steps, thrusting microphones into the faces of any member willing to comment. Some dodged, some fumbled. A few, like Senator Howard Briggs from Ohio, went on record. "I think Congresswoman Crockett is asking the right questions," Briggs told cameras, his tie slightly crooked as he pushed through the crowd. "The American people deserve transparency, even from the highest offices, especially from them." The quote ran on loop through the day, fueling headlines. Division grows in Congress over Crockett's claims. Meanwhile, inside committee rooms, staffers argued in hushed voices about whether a formal inquiry could be justified. Officially, nothing had been filed. Unofficially, people were already digging, looking into communications, tracing calls, asking if taxpayer resources had been used in Melania's push to silence the press. At the White House, the fallout was just as fierce. Holt briefed Melania and the residents, his tone sharper than usual. "We're being boxed in. Congress is sniffing me around. Journalists are quoting Crockett word for word. The more we push, the more this looks like guilt." Melania paced the room, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "So we do nothing? We let her insult me, humiliate my family." Charlotte spoke softly from the corner. "If we overplay, we confirm her story. The best option may be patience. Let the noise drown itself." Melania stopped pacing, her eyes burning. "Patience is weakness. If I look weak, I lose. I will not lose." Elsewhere, cable news panels lit up with talking heads. Some analysts framed Jasmine as reckless, gambling her career for the spotlight. Others praised her boldness, comparing her to truth-tellers of past eras. The split wasn't clean, it cut. Through parties, through demographics, even through households. In Detroit, a group of factory workers crowded around a break-room television. One of them, a man named Curtis, shook his head at the coverage. "Look, I don't care about the drama, but if the First Lady really leaned on the press to keep quiet, that's dirty. That's not what leadership is supposed to look like." His co-worker, a woman named Jeanette, responded, "I don't trust politicians, any of them, but that Crockett woman, she's got guts. Feels like she's talking for regular people." Public opinion was shifting. Pollsters reported a sharp divide. Supporters of Melania saw her as a mother unfairly attacked, while independents leaned toward Jasmine's call for transparency. For once, the usual lines weren't holding. In the Senate dining hall, whispers grew, louder. Some lawmakers speculated that if Melania's office had indeed misused resources, it could trigger a broader investigation. Others rolled their eyes, insisting it was just political theater. But no one could ignore the fact that Jasmine had turned a private family matter into a public test of accountability. That evening, Jasmine appeared on Anderson Cooper 360. Calm, collected, she repeated her central message. This isn't about me, it isn't about her. It's about whether Americans have the right to know when power is being used to silence truth. If we let that slide, then we've already surrendered our democracy, Cooper pressed her. Do you worry you've crossed the line by naming the First Lady's office directly? Jasmine smiled faintly. The only line I crossed is the one that separates silence from courage. Clips of that exchange ran on TikTok within minutes, drawing millions of views overnight. The hashtag #silence or courage began trending globally. At the same time, Melania's inner circle debated their next step late into the night. Holt, pacing with exhaustion, told the group plainly, she's winning the narrative. If we don't pivot, she defines us forever. Melania sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly. When she finally spoke, her words were icy. Then tomorrow I speak again. Not in videos, not with scripted words. Live. Let her see me face to face. Everyone in the room exchanged wary glances. They knew what she meant. A public event, live cameras, no filter. If it worked, it could reclaim control. If it failed, it could be catastrophic. But as Melania plotted her boldest counter yet, Jasmine's allies were already preparing to push even harder, ensuring the fight would reach a climax Washington hadn't seen in years. The live showdown. The nation woke up to one of the most anticipated events in recent political memory. Melania Trump, First Lady of the United States, had announced she would address the controversy live. Not a pre-recorded video, not a carefully edited statement. Live cameras, unscripted, unfiltered. The announcement alone sent every network to overdrive. Cable hosts speculated, pundits guessed at her tone, and millions tuned in, waiting to see if she would finally silence the storm. At precisely noon, Melania walked onto the White House press room stage. Her posture was upright, her outfit simple but striking, and her eyes betrayed no hesitation. She stood at the podium, microphones bristling in front of her, and looked directly at the cameras. I have heard the things being said, she began. Her accent crisp, her delivery calm. I have heard the accusations, the lies, the rumors. And I will say this, I am a mother before I am a First Lady. I will not allow my family to be used as a weapon in political games. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras zoomed in. She continued, her voice rising slightly. Shame on those who twist the truth for their own ambition. Shame on those who think destroying families is the way to win. America deserves better. The statement was emotional, powerful, but it wasn't airtight. She offered no evidence to counter the claims of a cover-up, no denial of the phone calls Jasmine had exposed, just indignation framed in motherhood and morality. As the press conference ended, journalists shouted questions that went unanswered. Melania turned and walked away, her heels echoing across the marble floor. Supporters hailed her strength. Critics called it evasion, but no one could deny it. The spectacle had seized the country's attention. That evening, Jasmine Crockett made her countermove. Sitting down with Rachel Maddow, she spoke calmly but with precision, wielding her words like a scalpel. I respect motherhood, I respect families. But this is not about a son, this is about the abuse of influence. I showed call logs, transcripts, pressure campaigns. That's not rumor, that's evidence. And when leaders use their positions to silence the press, it's not just a family matter, it's a democracy matter. Maddow leaned in. Congresswoman, do you believe the First Lady lied today? Jasmine didn't hesitate. I believe she chose silence over truth, and history has always shown us, silence protects no one, not even the powerful. Clips of that exchange became the night's top story. On Twitter, hashtags battled. Kai's Protect Barron trended alongside Montague's Silence or Courage. Families debated at dinner tables, radio callers shouted at hosts, and church groups discussed it between sermons. For many, it was no longer about the DNA results. It was about who had the courage to speak and who tried to hide behind walls. In Springfield, Missouri, a retired teacher named Howard Grant told his local paper, "Look, I don't care who you vote for. This isn't about red or blue. This is about truth. If Crockett's right, then power's being abused. And if she's wrong, then why are they so afraid to prove it?" That kind of sentiment echoed nationwide. Trust was the casualty. Washington had been divided before, but this fight pulled Americans into a deeper question. What do leaders owe the people when secrets leak? By week's end, congressional committees hinted at informal reviews of Melania's office communications. Journalists refused to drop the trail, and Jasmine Crockett, once seen as a firebrand outsider, had positioned herself as a national voice for accountability. The clash wasn't clean, it wasn't fair, it was messy, emotional, and deeply human. A mother desperate to shield her child, a congresswoman determined to strip away secrecy, two women caught in a storm, each playing for more than headlines, playing for legacy. And in the end, the story left the country with a lesson as old as democracy itself. Truth doesn't need defenders, but lies always do. So if you're watching this and wondering where it leaves you, remember this. Power bends to silence when people stop asking questions. Don't stop asking. Don't stop demanding honesty from those who claim to lead. Because the moment we trade questions for comfort, we lose what matters most: accountability. Stay curious, stay watchful. And if you want more stories that refuse to look away, make sure you subscribe. The truth deserves an audience.